Welcome back, everybody. It is the PDPreps Podcast. Gus Morris, Kienan O'Doherty coming your way October 14th here in the afternoon. Talking about an exciting week 7 slate of games. Pretty fun week 8 slate coming up too this week. But REC Adobe openers last week, REC Bay openers last week. Definitely a lot of stuff to get to this week in this pod. But yeah, pretty exciting week. I mean, obviously, we're going to be talking about, Windsor Newman, obviously, the big rivalry game last week. Keenan, you were there. It was a pretty exciting game, kind of close even up till the end. But yeah, again, another fun rivalry game that delivered some good action, some notable things to talk about. Yeah, I mean, RAC Adobe play is definitely going to be one of our big kind of topics this week. Kind of what we learned after, all these juggernauts kind of went head to head last week. I'll talk a bit about Vintage and Rancho. I was over at that game over in Napa. I guess we'll talk a bit about Marin Catholic San Marin too at the end. Again, just that one definitely kind of showed us a lot about kind of what the hierarchy of the RAC Adobe could look like this year. And yeah, also some pretty interesting notes in the from the REC Bay and the REC Valley too from last week. A couple teams that definitely some surprising results I don't think people saw coming. So, um, yeah, kind of before we dive into all of that stuff though, let's take a quick look at our North Bay North Bay football poll here after week 7 here, heading into week 8. Crazy, we're already in week 8. We only have 4 more weeks, I want to say, of the regular season left, which is crazy. But yeah, we're now under a month here until the NCS playoffs, seedings and brackets will be out. I'm taking a stab at doing some of my projections this week. There's some new wrinkles and stuff to take into account, but I think I have a pretty good handle on it. So we'll see how things shake out. But North Bay football poll this week kind of got a little weird. Cardinal Newman staying put here at number 1, but we have a couple other teams that kind of join the mix here. We have a number of ties actually too. We're doing this with like a point system. Everyone, kind of votes out their top 10. We assign points, to each position, and just how the points shook out. We have a number of ties this week, so kind of created some funky spots here, or whatever. But yeah, Cardinal Newman here coming in at number 1. They picked up that 35-20 win over Windsor last week. Newman still has 77 points atop our poll, 5 first place votes this week. Going to be playing at Rancho Cotati coming up this week in the second week of RAC Adobe League play. Marin Catholic rising up to number 2. I think the first time they've been that number 2 since like week 1 or week 2 or something like that. They have 75 points this week, really kind of right behind Newman in that regard. They got 3 first place votes. Basically, everybody who didn't vote, Cardinal Newman number 1 had them number 2. Everyone who didn't vote Marin Catholic number 1 had them number 2. So, so those two definitely, kind of evening out a little more after the last couple of weeks. Marin Catholic had been hanging down there at number 3 for a while. But Marin Catholic obviously, picked up that really big win over San Marin, 33-14 last week. Knocked San Marin this week down from number 2 to number 3. San Marin coming in with 61 points this week. So again, taking kind of a big drop off here, but not surprising after, kind of that result with Marin Catholic winning by a couple of touchdowns. San Marin, good game coming up this week. I think it'll be our game of the week. San Marin's gonna be hosting Windsor, second week of league play in the Adobe. First loss of the year, last week for San Marin. They're now 5-1. Still a pretty good resume. I think they're ranked number 11 or something still in the NCS. In the Max Preps rankings, Cardinal Newman I think is number 3, Marin Catholic's number 8, something like that. So again, the upper echelon of the Adobe is still as good as any, in the entire NCS. St. Vincent still undefeated, checking in here, still at number 4, 55 points this week. They actually created some separation this week, with Windsor. St. Vincent and Windsor kind of been flip-flopping in that 4 or 5 spot all year. Well, St. Vincent has kind of started to pull away a little bit, kind of in that 4 spot. They got 55 points this week. Windsor is at number 5 with 48 points. I think that's the biggest gap that we've had between those two teams, I think, like most of the season. So St. Vincent's still just rolling, 63-0 winners over Santa Rosa last week. They're going to be playing Annalee this week in the RAC Bay game that we thought might be a little more competitive, but I don't know. After last week in Creo, taking it to Annalee, well, we'll see about that one. But St. Vincent's still rolling. Windsor again staying put. First loss of the year last week, to Newman. Again, we'll get more into that game, but I think that final score might make it look like it wasn't as close as it was, but I feel like it definitely was. Windsor was definitely kind of in that until the end, late touchdown, all the student stuff. But again, Windsor has that really good game coming up this week against San Marin, looking to bounce back. Both those teams, looking to bounce back from their first losses. Coming in here at number 6 is Vintage. Vintage staying undefeated on the year at 6-0. They have 41 points. They took care of Rancho Cotati 10-7 last week. Defensive grinder decided on a last-second field goal by Henry Drozdovich. Just a kind of a defensive grinder. Both teams scored on their opening possessions, and then no points the rest of the game until 3 seconds left, and Drozdovich nailed a 42-yard field goal. So that was a good one. Okay, we'll talk a bit more about that one here in a bit. Vintage is going to be playing Marin Catholic this week, so that could be an interesting kind of defensive battle. But definitely, I feel like the Wildcats should be favored in that one. Our first tie here between Rancho Cotati and American Canyon here at number 7. Both teams got 29 points this week from voters. American Canyon actually had a kind of a weird midseason bye because Justin Siena had to forfeit their game last week just due to a lack of healthy players. Hope I've heard Justin will be able to kind of make a return this week against Casa Grande, but it's just been a tough season for Justin. No wins on the year. They've dressed like 23, 24 players most of the year, super young. Just a tough spot for that program to be, but hopefully they can get some momentum here towards the end of the season and build something up for the next couple of years. But American Canyon and Rancho here both tied for number 7. That leaves Casa Grande here at number 9 with 11 points. They were on bye last week. They're going to be playing Justin this week, so a good chance for Casa to crack their third straight win. Casa was tied last week with Annalee for number 9, while Annalee slides down this week into a 3-way tie for number 10. Here's where things get a little weird, but Annalee had a bit of a surprise loss last week to Maria Carrillo, 60-35. That Annalee defense just wasn't really ready for Carrillo's triple option offense, and Carrillo dropped 60 on him. So Annalee slides down here to number 10, or at least a 3-way tie for number 10 between Ukiah and St. Helena, both teams that rise up off the bubble here. All 3 of these teams got 4 points from our voters this week. So, we have a 3-way tie. I mean, our top 10 this week features 12 teams. So we're just making it a little bigger this week. But again, all these teams, Ukiah, St. Helena, Casa, Annalee, all these teams have kind of either been bottom tier or on the bubble, I feel like, for the last month or so. So at some point, I feel like all of them are gonna rise up in the top 10. So that's where we're at right now. Ukiah pulled back to 500 last week, beat Montgomery 45-20, and then St. Helena, kind of the class of the NCL1 over in Napa, Lake County. They're 7-0 on the year. They beat Fort Bragg 41-7. They're having a great season this year. They missed the playoffs last year after having the winning record. Doesn't look like that'll be the case this year. Saints are rolling right now, so another pretty good small school team that's been playing super well. So, and then our one team on the bubble or with receiving votes this week is Petaluma. The Trojans took care of business last week over Napa. I think they won pretty handily, but that is our North Bay poll for this week. Our top 10 is now top 12 essentially, with just Petaluma on the bubble, but kind of a weird week. I wasn't really expecting this, but kind of looking at the results and how people voted, I feel like it makes some sense, but a little surprised, I guess, that Carrillo didn't get any votes after beating Annalee. But, again, Carrillo also has that loss to Petaluma, too. So don't really know quite what to make kind of these bottom tier teams, but that's kind of how it's been all season, I feel like.
Yeah, we told you guys that these rankings are pretty fluid, and it doesn't get as more fluid than this. I'm not too Korea's having a very good last couple games, but I feel like I feel like I kind of understand in a way why Korea didn't get any votes. I don't think like one game kind of really elevates them to that top 10 level, or at least a vote from it. So I kind of get it. I honestly thought that Annalee was going to drop out of the top 10, to be completely honest with you. But with that kind of a loss, but our voters thought otherwise. It's interesting to see, because how Vintage has kind of been creeping up slowly but surely in these top 10 rankings, right? They're sitting right behind Windsor now. They're widening the gap between 6 and 7, between them and Rancho Cotati, and Rancho and American Canyon, should I say. Vintage is playing pretty good ball, and this week, kind of like you said, will tell us a lot about that program and how far they've come from last year. But like you said, with Rancho, they got the job done. Obviously, we'll go into a bit more detail later, but I think the top three is the right top three currently. But look, things could change, especially with all these teams still yet to play each other. So you never know.
Yeah, I mean, 6 of our top 8 teams, or I guess tied for 7 teams, are all from the RC Adobe, which again makes a lot of sense that, that is the upper caliber league with all the best teams in the area. And then again, the teams that even kind of are filling the gaps in there, right? St. Vincent and American Canyon also makes sense again, two defending state champions who are both having again very good seasons. So yeah, not a ton of surprises, I feel like, kind of in the upper half. But yeah, bottom half is just kind of a crapshoot, which it kind of has been all year. So it's kind of what
Merry-go-round.
makes it.
That's what I'm gonna call it. The
It's
merry-go-round.
kind of what makes it fun, having all these differing opinions and people who might take one win higher or the other. So yeah, it's been a fun year for doing this, and a couple more weeks left here, and yeah, once we get to the playoffs, we'll kind of see how we adjust these. But um, all right, with that kind of being done, Keenan, let's jump into our game of the week. Windsor Newman, another good rivalry game. Newman comes out 35-20 winners, but kind of a super back and forth. I mean, like not a crazy back and forth game, but kind of like eye-opening start for Windsor. Newman kind of found its form, got interesting late, and then Newman kind of pulled away and did what Newman does. But yeah, what was it like kind of being there? It looked like a crazy atmosphere and a pretty fun game to cover.
So so yeah, that was easily the most amount of people I've seen at a Newman game. Let's start that off. Even though it was raining, prior to the game and stuff, everyone showed up and showed out. Um, I will say that it was kind of ugly. It wasn't pretty football early on. A lot of turnovers, a lot of penalties, a lot of slips and fumbles and things like that. But yeah, look, Windsor. I mean, let's call a spade here. Windsor came out and punched him right in the mouth from the get go. Um, you know, head coach DJ Sexton and his crew. Their game plan was perfect over the first 2-3 drives, where they went up 13-0 early. I mean, let me tell you, this is my first time seeing both teams. I know you've seen, Cardinal Newman, in the first game, which I don't think is a really fair assessment of the Cardinal Newman team, right? But you've seen Windsor multiple times. And hey, look, I think Windsor's wide receivers are pretty underrated. They are a good little crew of wide receivers that they got over there. And Carter Vos has showed precisely pretty much why he's one of the most improved passers in the area for sure, executing that game plan last night. But it's the game of football, Gus, and Windsor had a 13-0 lead all the way up until like the last, minute 45 of the second quarter, going into halftime up 13-0, and then all of a sudden, 30 seconds, in the span of 30 seconds, they lose it. It took a touchdown run. Newman finally found his form a little bit, kind of like you said, took a touchdown run by Malachi. And it turns out I have a pronunciation. Bethumnarak is the pronunciation, Gus.
There we go. We got it now.
Well, I got it from the man himself. Malachi Bethumnarak, I think I had him for around, let me see here. I had him for 8 carries, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day. He's having a great season. But he broke away. It was kind of a weird play because Windsor was basically tackling him, had him tackled down, and then he, like a little pinball, he broke free and then just raced up the sideline, kind of like what he's done all year with his speed. So all of a sudden, 13-0 Windsor lead turns into a 14-13 halftime lead for Cardinal Newman within the first, with 30 seconds, in the span of 30 seconds, not to mention Cardinal Newman gets the ball coming out of the break too.
Mhm.
So,
Well, so they
Newman,
had so they had the Pat touchdown, and that wasn't that like on 4th down or something too? I saw, so that was like a huge play.
yeah, correct. It was like 4th and 2. And not only that, so they had the Bethumnarak touchdown, and then the play after the kickoff, or no, not the play after the kickoff, the series after the kickoff, Windsor was punting deep in their own territory. Balls, and Carter Vos is also their punter too. Bad snap, sails over Carter Vos's head into the end zone. Um, into the end zone, and it was kind of a fight there for the ball for a little bit, but Gavin Brockett was able to come down for it for the score. So like I said, 13-0 lead for Windsor. Windsor sitting pretty heading into halftime, in a great spot against the number one team that we think, or whatever, in the North Bay. And then all of a sudden they lose in the span of 30 seconds. Newman gets the ball out of the half. They're going into half 14-13 momentum. Out the window for Windsor, unfortunately. And that Newman wasted no time after the intermission, going for another score with Bethune-Narek again. And it was kind of just, Newman from then on there out. I mean, Windsor was definitely still in it for sure. And it was 28-20 with like a minute 45 left. Windsor scored, and then a little bit of controversy there in the end for Newman's sake, but they ended up scoring with like a minute 30 left to make it 35-20. But key takeaways here, I guess, Newman needs to start better, that's for sure. I kind of wrote this in the analysis piece as well, but apart from the Bishop O'Dowd game where they scored 30 points in the first quarter, and all the other games combined that they played, they've only scored 7 first quarter points total. So they need to start better if they want to win this league and they want to make a deeper run in the NCS playoffs, considerably the open playoffs as well, because that's not going to fly against these better. It's not going to fly against Marin Catholic. It's not going to fly against the teams like De La Salle, Pittsburgh. Who else do we have? Guess we got Liberty. All these teams that are open caliber teams, right? But Newman's resilient, man. I mean, their experience showed. We look at the grinded out tough win games they had this season. We look at the Grant score where they won 15-7, right? You look at the Pleasant Valley score where they won 14-12. So it's Newman's pretty resilient, and they got a resilient squad, and that experience certainly helped him, and I think that will help them, going forward, especially in these again tough matchups against the St. Marins, the Marin Catholics, and potentially whoever they get in the open, should they stay in the open as of right now. So but yeah, Newman took a while to turn on the Jets, but when they did, they definitely found that got their offense going. Cordell Strange, shout out to him. 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter alone, I believe. So he he's having a great year on the defensive side of the ball. One thing to monitor for Newman though is star pass rusher, obviously Khalil Vitoy got injured late in the game, and he was out for the rest of the game. From what I saw, they were checking out his knee. Not sure what it is. Haven't been able to check in, but obviously that's something we'll monitor. And then something else, really quick to monitor. All this talk about, a lot of the theme this year is the transfers between all these different schools and things. And Newman's obviously is no different. They had a couple of transfers that had finished their sit out period, but haven't been able to play last couple of weeks. So we're still going to monitor that and see what the situation is there. But yeah, Newman got the job done, passed the first big league test. I don't think Windsor's going to go anywhere. I know you feel differently, but I still think Windsor's a top 3 team in the Adobe.
I think they're a top 3 team. I mean, like I think this week San Marin Windsor will obviously tell us kind of if they are or not.
Will tell us a lot, but I still think and Gus, I said this in the analysis, but in an era where the Adobe sent 3 teams to the Open last year, if Windsor wins out, they could be that team. I'm not saying it's fully possible, and some Windsor folks might not want it because they don't want to play De La Salle opening round, right? But you never know. So, but yeah. Anyways, I do think Windsor's still a top 3 team in the Adobe. They're not going anywhere. Seems like every year they graduate a amazing talented group of seniors. Everybody writes them off, and then they prove everybody wrong again. And it seems like that's going to be the case this year. So, yeah, good game, great game. Cardinal Newman coming out on top.
Yeah, a couple things I did to add on that too. Yeah, I mean, again, you mentioned kind of the final score and stuff, and I mean, again, this game was 28-20. I think Windsor had scored like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter to make it a 1-score game, and it's like, hey, if they get a stop, get a chance to kind of come down and tie, the score and tie the game and keep this thing going. We saw that crazy, last year, we saw that crazy overtime game, between Newman and Windsor that, Newman pulled out, last second, in overtime. Right. So, had some potential for that. But, Newman got a couple of key first downs there. And then the controversy too, that you had kind of referenced there was, I kind of went back and was watching the stream, but it looked like Newman had gotten the kind of first downs that they had needed to kind of run the clock out, and they went in victory formation. They took a knee. And I don't know if it was like they realized that there wasn't enough time to actually run out, to fully run the clock or whatever. But then Newman ends up, so they take a knee and then they run another play, which that was the one that was it Path or was it Brody? I think it was Path, right?
No. It was Brody scored that
It was
touchdown.
Brody. Yeah, Brody and Estrella took it in for a touchdown, kind of after Newman had taken a knee. And I know that, Windsor people weren't too happy about that, of like, hey, you're taking a knee, like game's over, and then you go and run in one more touchdown. But it's a rivalry game. There's some gamesmanship going on or whatever. But I know that Windsor wasn't too happy about that. But play it till the game's over, right? So yeah, I mean, again, closer, I feel like, than the final score indicated. Kind of how that game flipped there too, in that 30-second span when they get those two touchdowns and they get the ball out, out of halftime, they get those two more. It was like, kind of seemed like, the game was over, and then Windsor made it a little more interesting late. But yeah, to your point about the transfers too, a couple key big time transfers too to keep an eye on, right? You've King Pitts, the Hawaiian 4-star sophomore lineman, who has a bunch of Division I offers. Yeah, he didn't suit up. And then same thing with Owen Graff, who's the really talented Montgomery wide receiver DB transfer. He also didn't suit up. The last day of the sit out period in the NCS was September 29th. Newman was obviously on bye last week, so this would have been the first week that any of these kids could have played, and none of them did. So not sure what's going on there, but just something to monitor. I'll keep an eye on that here in the coming weeks. But also, again, not the only school that's having a similar kind of issue with that too. I think St. Vincent has a couple of kids as well who should have been eligible by now and have also not suited up. So not sure what's going on, but a couple of kids who have not been cleared yet, I guess, to play. So again, hasn't really been a situation where Newman or St. Vincent has really needed these players. They're still rolling. Newman's won 5 in a row. St. Vincent is still undefeated. So yeah, we'll kind of see how that plays out. But both these teams are still playing super well, even with the guys that they got. So, yeah. And then also to your point about, I don't know, the Adobe being a 3-team open division. Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, this is going to be an interesting year in the Adobe. One of the things that I was, I've been keeping track of the Max Preps rankings kind of all year. San Marin actually was ranked. So heading into this game, the Adobe had 3 teams in the top 8, which is kind of what the open is. They had Newman, Marin Catholic, and San Marin. I think Newman was 4, San Marin was 7, Marin Catholic was 8. Well, after the loss, San Marin dropped all the way down, I think, to 11. So they dropped, I think, 4 spots with the loss to the number 8 team. So 1 team ahead of them. So they're currently out of the open. Obviously, they'd have to win out. They still play Newman, they still play Windsor, they still play Vintage, Rancho. They still have the whole gauntlet to get through. And then Windsor, same thing. They still have to play San Marin, Marin Catholic, which, if they win either of those games, I think they for sure could be up there. But, I don't think Windsor or Vintage or Rancho Cotati probably would elevate them. So, we'll see. We still have 4 more league games for all these teams to play. It is interesting, though. I mean, all 6 teams in the Adobe division are all ranked in the top 20 in the NCS. So, no game is going to be easy for any of these teams. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But kind of speaking of Vintage Rancho, that was the game that I was at last week. Defensive, gritty, grinder, kind of ugly. Yeah, second week in a row I've seen Rancho, and second week in a row Rancho's offense has not really shown up. But again, they were kind of in this game till late. Penalties just absolutely killed them towards the end of the game. I'll go back. I mean, again, both teams scored on their opening drives. Vintage had a nice, again, their run heavy offense was working well. Get a first quarter score on their on their opening possession. Rancho comes back, really quick answer, like a 2-minute scoring drive. Wyatt Grigori hits Luke Maury for like a beautiful little like fade route into the right hand corner. Hauls it in for a 19-yard score, and I'm like, all right, maybe we'll get some points tonight. And that was kind of always where we got all the way up until late. It was 7-7 all the way until late. Vintage actually had a chance to take the lead on a field goal late in the third, missed it. was Drozdovich, who was the REC Adobe Specialist of the Year last year, missed the first one, and then and then Rancho gets the ball back, is kind of putting together a really solid drive to open the fourth. They get all the way down, I think, to Vintage's like 25-yard line, and then they get flagged for 4 straight penalties. It was like a holding, a hurdling, a holding, and then
Oh
an
my God.
intentional grounding. So they go all the way from Vintage's 25 on first or second down all the way back to Rancho's 23. So they faced from like again a first and 10. They all of a sudden were backed up to face a 2nd and 63, all the way back from their own 23-yard line, which I've never seen that in high school football before. But
That's like a
kind of was
50
this.
yard swing.
Yeah, literally. And again, this is a drive that Rancho was putting together. They had converted this, a super key fourth down in midfield, a little jump, like trick play jump pass from linebacker, running back John McClellan to Jared Buckley up the middle, like kind of pulled out all the stops. We're getting this drive. Their defense is playing great, so they're thinking, man, if we get a score here, our defense can make a stand. Like, Vintage is not just this kind of team that's going to blow the roof off and like hit some 50-yard bomb or whatever. So it's like, you get a score here and your defense, digs in. This is a game that they obviously, could have won. Defense or penalties end up backing them up. They have to punt. Vintage gets it back with about 6 minutes left. Put together probably their best drive of the game. Super like just technical. Quarterback Blake Porter managed it perfectly. They get all the way. I think they converted 2 fourth downs on the drive. They get all the way down into Rancho territory, set it up for Drozdovich, who drills the game winner with 3 seconds left. So, pretty exciting game again for being as low scoring as it was. A very fast game too, which I personally enjoy. I get to get home a little faster, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, again, this is the second game in a row that I've seen, that I've covered Rancho, and their offense. Again, they have some big explosive play potential. That's kind of how they've been living on offense. And for the second week in a row, that just didn't materialize at all. I think they finished with 132 total yards of offense. 2 straight weeks now they've been held on to under 150 total yards of offense. They had that 28-7 loss to St. Vincent 2 weeks ago. So yeah, the last 2 weeks have not been good for Rancho's offense. And again, doesn't matter how good your defense plays. It's cliche, but you got to score points to win the game. And Rancho's got to figure something out because unfortunately, Vintage was the lowest ranked REC Adobe team like in league that they're going to face this year. Still got, San Marin, Rancho, or San Marin, sorry, Newman, Marin Catholic wins are all ranked significantly higher. So this is the game that Rancho kind of needed to win. And I kind of wrote about this a bit too this week, but it's a very good thing that Rancho won its 2 games against teams in its own division because, again, there's a chance now that if Rancho doesn't figure their offense out, that they could be bottom of the barrel again in the RC Adobe, and if they don't win any games, they're going to be 4-6, just like they were last year. And with the new playoff format, we'll kind of like I need to kind of figure out kind of where they stand, or how this new system is going to work with the new amendment and stuff. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, again, there's a chance that Rancho goes winless again in league this year. If they finish 4-6, they're going to have those 2 wins against teams or against Division II teams. That'll help bolster their resume. That'll make them playoff eligible. But if they can win at least one more game, then they'll be fine. But they got to figure something out offensively because they have not been able to move the ball super well. Again, defense has been great still, but offense just really needs to figure something out. So. I mean, again, road coming up. So to finish out league, they're playing Newman, who's number 3 in the NCS, Marin Catholic, who's number 8, Windsor is number 12, and San Marin, who's number 11. So they gotta steal at least one of these to fully guarantee their playoff eligibility, but they gotta figure out something offensively to make that happen. So yeah, I mean, again, you saw Rancho kind of to start the year. I mean, you saw them in the O'Dowd game, you saw them in the Ukiah game. They have the potential to,
Yeah.
and the players to do it. It just hasn't been there the last couple of weeks.
No, and then that's been clear as day. The other thing I want to say about Rancho is obviously, they tend to and obviously their opponents, or at least St. Vincent was better than that, but Rancho tends to just judging off last year, Rancho tends to play up with their opponents. Like last year's the San Marin game, final game of the season, came down to a field goal, right? Wins. I think it was the Windsor game was 14-7.
Yeah.
Right. Marin Catholic was actually pretty close, or somewhat close. I can't remember exactly. But Rancho has the ability and the talent to hang with these teams. So I'm not counting Rancho out by any stretch of the imagination. But because like we said, their offense has so much potential, and when they turn it on, kind of like we saw against Ukiah, kind of like we saw against O'Dowd, you know, um, a couple plays maybe go their way against St. Vincent, their offense looks a bit different, right? But what we saw, we saw what they can do. They just need to get it clicking, kind of like you said. And it could start clicking against one of these big teams. I don't know. Who knows? All of a sudden the flip may switch, and it may switch back to who they were playing, the way they were playing, like against Ukiah and against O'Dowd offensively. So they just need to find go back and find what really made their offense click earlier on and stuff like that. And I think they're going to be fine. I really do think that they could take it to one of these upper teams. Not saying well, they beat them. I don't know, but they will certainly give them, one heck of a game, as the Adobe is known for. So, but yeah, it's funny because everyone at the Carl Newman game and Windsor game were asking me about the score. They were like, "Is this real? 10-7?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's 10-7, 42-yard field goal." They're like, "No way."
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but also the other thing is I think people were more in tune with the crazy Mariners Tigers 15 inning game that was going on in the MLB playoffs. But yeah, anyways, I think Rangers going to be fine. They just got to go back in and kind of find what really worked for them offensively and kind of go back to that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of weird scores that people weren't expecting, kind of a good transition point to kind of talking about what happened in the REC Bay and the REC Valley last week too. Um, I think we'll start kind of with the REC Bay, just because this is kind of where we have it's obviously all Sonoma County teams, but we've kind of been talking. We've been pretty high on Annalee this year. They'd won 4 in a row. Their offense was like fully back to like what Annalee, and like high powered. Putting up a ton of points, offense, that they've been in the past. And, they were playing Carrillo in, a young and growing Carrillo team that has shown some flashes this year, but Annalee beat Petaluma 52-49. Petaluma then turned around and beat Carrillo. So we're kind of thinking, all right, this should be a good tune-up game for Annalee, and it completely went opposite. Carrillo
Every
ran
time
for
we say that.
Carrillo ran for like almost 450 yards, put up 60 points, like absolutely had a field day with their run heavy triple option offense. And yeah, I mean, final was 60-35. Carrillo comes into Sebastopol and stuns Annalee. But again, we've been high on Annalee all year, but we have said the one thing that's kind of been their bugaboo is their defense, especially the run defense. And Carrillo just exploited that to the nth degree this week. So yeah, third game that, I mean, Annalee's defense has now had, like, there have been 3 teams that Annalee's played that have had rushed for at least 380 or more yards in games this year, which you got to shore that up if you're going to want to have a successful, long postseason run here. So,
Guess
but
who they
yeah,
play this week?
yes, and now they're playing St. Vincent this week, a team that's probably has probably the most high powered offense in the entire North Bay, honestly. So that'll be interesting to watch, but. Yeah, I mean, I think what that result did was, we'd kind of been talking about Annalee as being this kind of a dark horse contender, maybe, like their offense could obviously, keep up with anybody. But I mean, this loss, I feel like definitely makes the REC Bay for sure now a 2-team race. I mean, this is again going to come down to St. Vincent Ukiah again, which should be a super fun game here in a couple weeks. But yeah, a bit of a surprising game, but I feel like also, or a bit of a surprising result, but I feel like also if you kind of, looked a little deeper kind of into Annalee this year and kind of what Carrillo does. Yeah, I mean, maybe not the most surprising, but yeah, I mean, again, third, 400 yards for the Pumas, season high for them, 60 points, I think was the most they put up in like a number, like 4 or 5 years or something like that. So, a bit of a surprising result, but again, it made some things a little more clear here in the RC Bay race. So,
Yeah, I think so too. I swear, every year we just don't know what to think of Korea, because it's like they'll lose games that they should have won, and then they'll surprise us all of a sudden, like this week. They had they had a their other one, their win before Annalee against Milpitas. They had a 50-yard passing touchdown to win, and they almost never
Yeah.
passed. So it's like, what are we doing here? And obviously, I love Jay Higgins, and I love the staff over there. But yeah, it's weird because it's like, obviously, we're thinking, okay. Okay, like Ukiah, St. Vincent, top two teams possibly, in the Bay. But does this establish Carrillo as the third best team? Beating Annalee like this? I don't know. I mean, the third best team in that league. I don't know, Gus. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, this career team has definitely been kind of hard to handicap this year, just because of the graduates. So many guys. They've had even again in some of their notable wins, they haven't really had. I guess until the last couple weeks, they haven't had like your like Logan Bruce type, right? Who's, they're
Yeah.
like, their workhorse back is going to carry the ball 30 times in a game, right? But the guy who's emerged the last couple weeks has been Estefan Ramirez. He went absolutely bananas in this game. He had 180 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. He also had a receiving touchdown, and he had 2 picks on defense. So that's certainly a day to write home about for Ramirez. He's definitely been kind of emerging as one of their big time playmakers on both sides of the ball. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, again, this is now a 2-team race. We'll kind of see what happens now between Annalee. I mean, Montgomery is super down this year. Santa Rosa has shown some fight. But yeah, I mean, we'll kind of see. But again, it does seem like this is once again going to come down to Ukiah and St. Vincent here in a couple weeks. So, but kind of a similar thing also played out in the REC Valley race. I know that you had said, I don't know, Redwood's really going to be up there, and then after they almost came out and they beat Casa, I'm like, I don't know, it could be one of these frisky teams, and then now that notion is totally out the window. Last week, Redwood lost to their rival Tam 7-2. Um, this game was scoreless. This game was scoreless up in like late in the fourth quarter. Tam got a touchdown, and then Tam actually took an intentional safety to seal the game. I think like as time was winding down, as time was winding down. So the craziest part of this, I feel like too, this is the second time that Redwood has lost a game 7-2 this year. They also lost to San Leandro 7-2. I don't remember that ever happening, but kind of a wild thing. But this is not a good loss for Redwood. I'm just going to go out and say that. Tam had one win coming into this game over Justin Sienna, a team again who had to forfeit this past week. Um, and Tam also lost to San Rafael, a team who they hadn't lost to in 15 years prior to this season. So, but again, I was texting with the Marin IJ reporter Ian Ross, and he's like, honestly, just like it's cliche, but throughout the record books, when these two teams play, this is one of these weird Marin rivalry games that just strange things happen. So a little bit like the Egg Bowl or like Windsor Newman, right? It's like even though one team could be super heavily favored, things could be weird and funky. So yeah, but 2 losses now for Redwood. They're effectively, I feel like, out of the league race. This is now once again going to come down to Casa Grande and American Canyon. So, that game I think is at the end of the month. Definitely one that we'll have circled and we'll have covered. But yeah, just again this week I feel like certainly cleared up a lot about what the REC Bay and what the REC Valley are going to look like. So, obviously, yeah, just some interesting results. I feel like that have opened the door for some of these other favorites to really kind of rise out of the rest of the league, and contend for the league title here. So, anything else on those, or do you want to talk about a bit more about the Adobe, kind of what we learned this week?
Yeah, just real quick on the whole Tam thing. Let's obviously, we focus on their loss to San Rafael and stuff, and their only win being Justice Siena, but they had they had a really tough preseason schedule. Obviously they played San Marin, they played San Ignatius. They lost to North Game their opener by 7. So I think their strength of schedule, Gus, is rated like a 9.5 or something like that. Maybe I could be wrong on that. Someone can fact check me in the comments if you want to, but yeah, it's yeah. I grew up in Mill Valley, so I'm kind of used to this game kind of being bananas. But I just that proves my point. I guess that Casa MCAN is going to be kind of the top two, and Redwood's kind of a tier below that. But yeah.
Yep.
Anyways, let's Yeah, go ahead. Let's transition back to the Adobe real quick because I know you wanted to talk about some of those other openers.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of last thing we're going to touch on this year, but we kind of know the hierarchy of the Bay of the Valley. We know that Sonoma Valley has kind of emerged as the class again of the Mountain Division. But the Adobe, I feel like, got super interesting after this week. Again, we've talked a lot about how hard Moraine Catholic's non-league schedule has been. Kind of
Oh yeah.
even going back to last week, being like, they might be the best 1-4 team in the entire section, right? I mean, 3 of their 4 losses have come against teams that are, I think, currently ranked in the top 30 in the state and Cal, like in the Cal High Sports rankings. Even the one loss that they had the one loss outside of that group was to Indracom, who I think is now 6-1 on the year. And Indracom, I think we just talked about this last week, beat Pleasant Valley by 21, and this is the Pleasant Valley team that Newman only beat by 2 points. So again, we're doing some transitive games here and kind of seeing how things stack up. But yeah, I mean, again, I think that this opening week, they beat, they hosted San Marin first game that, Marin Catholic has had lights, kind of beginning of a new era down there for Friday night lights for football for the Wildcats, but they won 33-14 pretty handily. Um, their quarterback, I think his name's Dylan Skrinar, was really good in that game. And kind of again, this is there was a lot of pieces that Marin Catholic kind of had to replace last year. It's funny to say that they were a bit down last year from how good they were, still being an open team, but it was not kind of the Marin Catholic team. I feel like we've seen of old up like with Division I caliber quarterbacks and stuff. But yeah, I mean this new kid is coming up and it's been absolutely shows out. Played again this absolute gauntlet of a preseason or of a non-league schedule as battle tested as any team in the entire North Coast section. So honestly, in my eyes, I feel like this game has kind of shifted a bit, kind of what I thought that the league race could look like. I'm starting to think that Marin Catholic could be the favorite now. Again, Newman is 5-1. They're ranked, I think, number 27, I want to say, or 30, I think, in the entire state in Cal High Sports rankings, which is the highest they've been ranked in a long, long time. They still have the best win of any team in the area over Grant, who's also a top 30, 35 team in the state. Again, Marin Catholic doesn't really have any premier wins kind of up until this last week, but their non-league schedule is absolutely brutal. They have a good emerging quarterback. Yeah, and again, this is just a super talented, tough program. It doesn't matter kind of, like who they have in it. They're always going to be good and always going to kind of be competitive. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, again, I do think Newman has some things going for them too, right? Like we've heard that, sophomore quarterback LT Ritamosa, he's getting close to coming back from his broken collarbone. I don't know if he'll play this week, but there's a chance I think he might play next week against San Marin. Again, he got hurt in the second quarter of that, season opening loss to Manteca, so he's been out for the better part of almost 2 months now. So he's getting close to coming back. That would be a huge addition for Newman kind of late in the season. And then like we talked about too with the transfers, if these kids do get cleared, and if they can suit up and take the field, they have again, they have King Pitts, the big defensive lineman. They have a couple other really solid, lineman transfers too, who have not suited up yet. If they get these guys in, that's just going to make this team even better and kind of really just elevate their ceiling. So yeah, I mean, again, if reinforcements are on the way, also not to mention too, if Baitoy, we'll see kind of what his injury status is too. If he's banged up or if he can make a return here in the next couple weeks. Yeah, I mean, Newman possibly has some reinforcements on the way. But yeah, I really do feel like kind of after this week, Marin Catholic, it's like, all right, we're not the 1-14 people think we are. Like we're a damn good team. So I don't think this league race is kind of anywhere near over. I mean, I don't think it was ever over after the first week anyway, but I think there are a lot of people who are super high on Newman, and again, rightfully so. But I think that
Yeah.
that this Marin Catholic team has been underrated for what they are, and I think they definitely showed that this week. Um, so yeah, we'll see. But again, definitely that end of this month, Newman or Marin Catholic is coming up to Newman. Halloween night game actually, which should be super fun. Hopefully, all people are all dressed up and going crazy and stuff. But that
Whoever's
once
covering that
again.
between me and you gotta show up to a Halloween costume or something like
That'd
that.
be pretty funny. Yeah, yeah, show up in a costume or something. But yeah, again, once again, October 31st, I feel like that new Memorial Catholic game, once again, is going to come down and decide who takes the RAC Adobe again this year.
Yeah, I totally think so too. Yeah, it's weird you use the word underrated with a program like Marine Catholic, but that's just where we're at. I think it's kind of the same last year. So many people were high on Newman and their defensive line and stuff like that, and then obviously I think you were at both games that they played, but the first game down in Kentfield, the regular season one, I'm pretty sure people up were super high on Newman coming into that one, and of course Marine Catholic kind of controlled that one, and then obviously the second one in the playoffs, I'm pretty sure was you were there, so I'm sure you remember like low scoring game that the second one.
The first
Um,
one was pretty low scoring. Second one, Newman scored a couple touchdowns late to pull away at the
yeah,
end. But
yeah.
yeah,
So it's Marine Catholic just keeps for whatever reason just I can't believe people are using underrated with that program because with Coach Mozzie is one of the best coaches in the North Bay. So yeah, I think it's going to come down to Newman Marine Catholic. I know Newman people are excited that they get Marine Catholic on their home field this year. So it should be great atmosphere that one. But yeah, Marine Catholic held San Marin to like only 17 yards rushing too total, which is like
yeah,
kind of a pretty big stat considering San Marin's such a big passing team. But to take away that plan B option as well as they did, that's big for Marine Catholic. So yeah, but back to what we were talking about. I think it's going to be Newman Marine Catholic, to wind things out, albeit unless we got a big surprise in there, which isn't out of the realm of possibilities, but this Adobe slate. So you never know.
exactly. Yeah. Well, kind of last thing actually, I wanted to mention too. We're back on Catarelli Watch this week. Keeping track of St. Vincent running back Mason Catarelli in his pursuit of history. Um, Actually pretty funny. So he only had 3 offensive touches last week. He only ran for 13 yards, which I think is actually the single lowest mark of his career, which is funny because St. Vincent won 63-0, but they just didn't need him a whole lot and didn't use him a ton. But he had 2 carries, both went for touchdowns. He also had a kickoff return touchdown to open the game. So that gives him 3 more touchdowns for his career, brings him to 93 career touchdowns. He's now just 6 away from the all-time North Coast section record of 99, held by Antioch's Najee Harris. Honestly, again, they're playing Annalee this week. Again, an Annalee defense that's given up a lot of points. Non-zero chance he might be able to go for that this week. We'll see. But the 13 rushing yards does kind of set him back a little bit. He's still, or from the all-time Redwood Empire record of 5,740, set by St. Vincent running back Kai Hall. Catarelli now has 4,944 career rushing yards, so he's now just under 800 rushing yards away from Catarelli. And I think we have 4 games left in the regular season, and obviously whatever St. Vincent, St. Vincent is also bound again for a big playoff run here. So I it I still think he's going to get it. But it's just kind of very cool to get to again kind of watch a player like this, chase after some all-time records like this. So yeah, inching closer every game for Mason Catarelli towards some all-time history here.
Yeah, totally. Couple things before we go, Gus. Obviously, former Petaluma Trojan Luke Haggard, and we've been following his story the last couple weeks, made another start this weekend against the 49ers, believe it or not. His hometown team, his 4th consecutive start in the Buccaneers 30-19 win over the 49ers down in Tampa Bay. And then obviously, if you've been following the MLB
Oh,
playoffs,
he did also get hurt though. He left the
oh,
game injured.
never mind. Well,
No,
no,
he left it. Well, he started again, 4th straight game starting, but he left the game injured. And I mean, again, the Buccaneers have been maybe the most injured team in football outside of the Niners. And yeah, just adds to that. So hopefully he can come back, but just again, a tough break for Luke, kind of enjoying this really amazing opportunity for him. So hopefully he can come back. But yeah, still a very cool story that he's been able to contribute like this.
Yeah, and then one more thing, if you've been following the MLB playoffs, got some local talent. Obviously, former Marine Korea standout Andrew Vaughn had a tough go to start the season with the White Sox organization, got traded to the Brewers, and now is super hot. And now he's in the National League Championship Series with the Brewers. Had a very good division series over the Cubs. Now he's facing the Los Angeles Dodgers there in the National League Championship Series. And then Gus, I'm pretty sure we also have some local representatives in the American League Championship Series as well with the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah, Tony Arnerich, who is another local product. I think he was well, off the top of my head, this is bad. I think he was Montgomery and SRGC. He also was a coach at SSU for a little bit. He is bullpen coach, I believe now for the Seattle Mariners. Um, the other guy who I had mentioned, he had was Justin Broyle for the Toronto Blue Jays. He got into a relief pitcher. He got into a game, Casa Grande grad. He got into a game for the Blue Jays in the ALDS. But he was unfortunately left off the roster for the ALCS. So we just got Arnerich over with the Mariners, and then also we have kind of back with the Brewers too. We have Jason Lane, who is the third base coach I believe now for the Milwaukee Brewers. So Jason Lane, Annalee guy, or I'm sorry, El Molino grad, SRGC product too. So yeah, some good representation here for Sonoma County in the baseball playoffs. So cool to see that.
Cool to see that indeed. Well, that'll wrap it up for us for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for tuning in and watching and listening, or however you consume this content. And we will see you guys next week.